Welcome back into the Motor Index, folks. And well, is this the year Denny Hamlin finally gets it done and brings home the NASCAR Cup Series championship? If he remains in the form he is currently in, perhaps. We will have to wait and see. I will get to that topic in a later video later this week, but today we are talking everything Denny Hamlin at Dover, getting his fourth win of the season, and I think it actually might be his fourth career win at Dover. If I'm actually being honest, I have to go look at that. I may be wrong on that. I might have heard that somewhere, but anyways, Denny Hamlin gets it done at Dover. Not too shocking. This was kind of, the easy pick coming into the weekend, given how successful he's been in recent years here. But I picked Chase Briscoe, who ended up coming home second, very close to winning this race. We'll get into some specifics on what happened with him later, but Denny Hamlin, very impressive stuff. Not the best car on the day, but the best. Did not make any mistakes. Made the least amount of mistakes of the drivers at the front of the field, and that's how it's done. This was a pretty crazy race for Dover standards, I felt, at least. I think the new tire that they brought specifically only here to Dover did play a factor, at least in the beginning of the race, and I thought it actually was a pretty entertaining race. I thought, the first stage obviously was kind of chaotic with everybody learning the new tire. There was a lot more dramatic of tire fall off then than there was as the race went on, but I do think that the tire did play a factor, and it was not like a Phoenix where the tire was just a rock and not wearing at all. I thought this race actually kind of did play out in a Phoenix sense with, in my opinion, the two best well, maybe not Hamlin, but the two best current drivers at Phoenix are certainly Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin. Those two were at the front of this field for much of the race. But you know who was at the very front of this field to lead much of this race was Chase Elliott, who a lot of Chase Elliott fans are once again getting testy as far as, Alan Gustafson and the 9 team. Elliott's putting him in position to win, and it's not Elliott taking him out of position to win on a much more consistent basis. I don't know what to tell Elliott fans. He led 238 of the 400 laps at Dover this Sunday, and I don't remember exactly what happened towards the end of the race. I mean, he finished inside the top 10, but I think he was up front during some of those final restarts. But there were times throughout this race, like during the pit cycle during stage 2, when you're in the lead and long pit stop, next thing you know, you're further back. It's just like, I don't know, you can't be throwing stuff away like that every single week like the 9 team have been doing. And, a lot of people have said, well, that monkey kind of eased off their back, if you will. It's not completely off their back, but it eased off their back a little bit after the Atlanta win for Chase Elliott. But I don't know. This felt like one he should have won. I will say, I think the Elliott fans do have a point there. But that's not to say this Hamlin win is by any means tainted or anything. I think Denny certainly deserved to win this race more than the 9 team did because of the mistakes they made. So, this race actually, kind of like I said, it played out a lot more exciting than I think the majority of at least recent Dover races have provided. Like I said, stage 2 got a lot of very exciting restarts, but as the runs went on, the field would get dragged out a little spaced out a little bit, and we'd kind of be waiting for the pit cycle. Like I mentioned, that pit cycle is pretty crazy. A lot of people taking themselves out and making costly mistakes, most notably Chase Elliott. But then as these runs would go on, like I remember after that cycle, you ended up with Bell and Hamlin at the lead, and because of the lap traffic, I think it was Ty Dillon ended up preventing Hamlin from holding the lead, and Bell was able to pass him and go on and win the stage. So, and there was a lot more tire wear, at least as those runs were going on at the end of the stages. It felt like the passing really did pick up at the end of the stages, which we didn't really get to see in the final stage because of how it played out with the weather, with the cautions, and with having to come back after an hour of a red flag. We didn't really get to see as much of that, But I thought the last stage was still pretty compelling, especially with Christopher Bell staying out on that pit cycle and catching that caution for rain at just the right time. Had he been able to win that way, that would have been pretty crazy for him. But and it would not have been the first time Christopher Bell's won that way. I think back to last year at the Coca-Cola 600, the phantom rain there at the towards when they called it. That was a little weird last year at the Coke 600. But yeah, this would have been. I think this would have been a weird one as well to call. Just we all watched how that rain came through and blew through really quickly, and then it was as sunny as it had been the entire day. So that would have been a weird one for them to have called off. I think had that been maybe 20, 30 minutes longer of rain at Dover, I think we would have potentially thought about calling it just because of the light situation and first off, that's another thing. How does Dover not have lights? That's a crazy idea. That's a crazy concept to me, but I guess not everywhere is as updated as other tracks. So pretty crazy stuff, but yeah, let's just get into that, how that overtime played out. That was pretty crazy. So obviously, like I said, you have Bell, and I think it was it, I'm forgetting, wasn't Ty Gibbs, was it? 2 cars stayed out. I know Christopher Bell was the first one when that caution came out. And then the big idea, or the big question was, okay, are they going to come down and pit at the start of this? Because we're only going to have 10 or 12 laps to go. And yeah, the cars who are going to be behind them were going to have newer tires, but it was only going to be for such a short run. And think about if, like what happened, we ended up getting multiple cautions. So think about had Christopher Bell not pitted at the end of that, because first off, he did pit, but then he ends up in the front again, and I want to know how that happened. I must have missed something, but how did Christopher Bell pit after the rain delay and then end up towards the front of the pack? I don't know how that happened, and I don't remember exactly where he finished. I mean, he doesn't finish in the front, but how, I don't know. That aspect of the end of the race kind of went over my head, and I never really caught why that happened. But had he been able to restart first, I think with the way this played out with the first caution, the second caution, and obviously the first caution was because of Christopher Bell, but say somebody else had wrecked, if you end up in that overtime and you're Christopher Bell on the older tires from not pitting, you might have went on to win the race. I don't know. I don't know how that would have played out. Obviously, it would have been a significant tire advantage for the guys behind him, but I don't know. I think that whole way that played out was very weird. But you get that first restart where Christopher Bell, not in the theoretical sense, in the real sense, ends up getting wrecked. And then you end up with teammates on the front row. I know there was another restart, I'm pretty sure. And then you end up with the teammates on the front row, Hamlin and Briscoe. And, for a second there on that final overtime, I thought Briscoe was going to get him. And I thought, and Briscoe even went on to say in his post-race interview that had that not been a teammate, I would have probably been able to win that, probably in a little bit of a dirty manner, but would have been able to win the race. And certainly doing that to Denny Hamlin at Joe Gibbs Racing, probably not the thing you'd want to do, only having been there a couple months if you're Chase Briscoe. But let me just say about Chase Briscoe, I think this will be common thought in about a month if the run continues. That's one of the fastest cars in Cup right now, period. Chase Briscoe is one of the fastest drivers right now in the Cup Series. I think he's 4th in the standings, if I'm not mistaken. He's either 4th or 5th. So, and that goes from you got to keep in mind, he might be 4th or 5th right now. The start of the season, he was not on it at all. Like, yeah, sure, they might have been able to run up front and win the pole of the Daytona 500 and, run towards the front of the field. But if you look at some of those runs, that 19 car for a while, Chase Briscoe was even saying they were feeling the pressure because of how bad they were running. I mean, and it's how bad they were running for the 19 cars standards. Like, yeah, the standard is just so much higher at JGR. Just look at Ty Gibbs, how badly he's getting ripped for over the past year. And now look at the speed in that car too right now. And we're going to get into the top finishers here in a second, but I'm doing a video later this week, going into why I think Denny Hamlin is the title favorite right now, and B, why I think Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole is, I would say, the best team right now in NASCAR at this very point. We might get a month or two down the line and maybe Hendricks rattled off like 4 or 5 straight. This conversation could change. But at this very second in the sport, I think if I was doing my team power rankings, Gibbs is number one at the moment. And I'll go into all of why I think that on that video. But yeah, it's really, really impressive stuff that they're doing this year. I think we're up to, is it 8 or 9 cup wins? I think it's 8 cup wins for Gibbs this year so far. So very impressive stuff. But let's enough on that. We're gonna get on into some of our finishers here. So Hamlin won, Chase Briscoe too. Already mentioned those guys and kind of how that played out. And that one more thing I want to mention on Briscoe was, and kind of on Hamlin as well. Briscoe had 2 fresh tires on that restart. Not from, he didn't get them that second, but he had 2 fresher tires than Hamlin had. So that's what did make it a lot, or very impressive, Hamlin beating Briscoe there, was that he did have significant or inferior tires to a point. Coming home third yesterday was Alex Bowman, who I didn't think he was ever going to have a chance on that restart, but I will just say this. I mean, Bowman as a whole has been running very good again. Started the season very good. Really, really good start to the season. Then there was a small middle point there where he kind of disappeared and went off the face of the earth. But it feels like the past 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I have to go look at the runs, have certainly been back to the Alex Bowman standard. Now, will it be enough to keep his job in 2026? I can't answer that question right now. I think that question remains to be seen on both Bowman's side and Carson Hocevar's side. Carson Hocevar hasn't been a factor in the past few weeks. So has his stock potentially cooled just a bit? Not saying it's cooled forever, but cooled a degree or two down, maybe a little bit. And I think the same thing with with Alex Bowman. I think his hot seat has maybe cooled, a couple degrees, just a couple. We got a lot of season left, got a lot more peaks and valleys to go. But I think the speed for Bowman has been really good recently. And who else has been slowly improving, who's also kind of been through a period like this, is Kyle Larson. Obviously, nobody's here is saying Kyle Larson's seat is hot, but there was a 4 or 5 race stretch in recent weeks where Kyle Larson was, and it's funny how we say, oh, he hasn't been getting it done, and he's still finishing in the top 10 most weeks. But certainly has not had race-winning speed. The 5 car has not for the past 4 or 5 weeks. But I thought, he was on the front 2 rows for some of those restarts. I thought there was a potential that Larson could have snuck away here with a win. But that being said, the speed is slowly improving. So certainly heading in the right direction for him. And I think especially with Indianapolis coming this week, I've got a win certainly on the horizon here for Larson. And it might be this coming week. We'll see. Coming home 5th, Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs, who will also be moving to the championship of the in-season tournament this coming weekend at Indianapolis. So that's really big for Ty Gibbs. Like I already mentioned, I went in the whole spiel about Joe Gibbs Racing, but Ty Gibbs, that speed has certainly been a lot better. I don't know if it'll be good enough to win a race this season, but if it's good enough to keep him, running close to the top 10 or inside the top 10 for the majority of the rest of the year, that's solid. That's solid improvement for sure. Chase Elliott in 6th. We already talked a lot about his day. Still coming home with a 6th place finish. It's not bad by any means, but especially with the day he had, you would have liked to see probably a top 2 or 3 at worst. But you take it and run, especially take the playoff point that he got winning stage 1, because he's going to need all of that and more probably coming in the playoffs. He actually becomes the points leader leaving Dover. So even though it wasn't the greatest day, he does leave with the points lead, which would be a huge thing for him to get if he won the regular season, obviously with the playoff points. Bubba Wallace comes home 7th. I feel like it's a step in the right direction for the team. I don't think it's necessarily anything new as far as Wallace running good on short tracks, but as far as current form, yeah, I definitely would like to see Wallace continue to stack up some more top tens and hopefully maybe some top fives. Uh, I I don't know if he'll need a win to get in the playoffs, but you would certainly you want to get that win sooner rather than later if you're Bubba for sure. But then again, on the Bubba side, you got a lot of drama that is way out of your control with this whole court thing. So I don't know how that's even affecting the team. So honestly, this could even be even a more impressive run for Bubba because of the broader context outside the racetrack. So we'll see. Coming home eighth is Ryan Blaney. Is that the highest Ford? Yeah, the highest Ford of the day is Ryan Blaney, and I guess the final three of the top 10 are all Fords, but the sole Penske driver in the top 10 is Ryan Blaney. I mean, what more do I got to say other than he's just great at the short tracks? Yeah, it's not one of those short flat ovals like Blaney's known for being really really good on, but I don't even know if he's ever won at Dover at any level of NASCAR. I'd have to go back and look at that, but yeah, Blaney was pretty uncompetitive for most of the day, and then kind of snuck his way into the top 10. And I feel like eighth or seventh was about where I saw him at, so probably about the finish he deserved for Ryan Blaney. So I think he's got some good tracks coming up, especially Iowa in 2 weeks. I think that's going to be a big one where I probably will be picking Ryan Blaney. But yeah, I think he's in a great spot as far as the season's concerned. Another guy who I think is getting very hot at the moment is Chris Buescher. Comes home ninth. Yeah, I keep saying it every week. I can continue to repeat myself on here, and I'm going to do so once again. All the races through the final 5 races of the regular season on the table for Chris Buescher to win, period. Especially when you got Brad Keselowski finishing 10th behind you in this race. Those two having speed. We know Ryan Preece has had plenty of speed throughout this year. They've got the speed to win, and especially with a place like Daytona and even a Watkins Glen coming up where Buescher won last year. Keep an eye on especially the whole RFK as a whole, but Buescher specifically. Definitely look out for him. So, and like I mentioned, Brad Keselowski comes home at Dover 10th. He's another guy who's looked really good recently. So, if you could make the bet that RFK as a whole, as an organization, would win one race in the next 5 weeks, I think that's a solid bet that you'd probably get some pretty good odds on, and I think it could certainly cash. So I feel like I'm saying the word certainly a lot today. Probably am. So, but I'm new to this whole YouTube thing, so got to get my practice in somehow. So, yeah, with that being said, I think that's all I've got for y'all. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I hope everybody enjoyed the races out at Dover this weekend. I certainly think I did because I always come into Dover with some pretty low expectations, and I leave pretty satisfied. So, really looking forward to Indianapolis, though, this coming weekend. So, all right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching. Take care, and God bless.